guys, and welcome to the Bodybuilding Dietitians podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today for what is yet again another Q&A episode. And as always, you're joined by your hosts, Tiara, Jack, and Damien. We are going to get straight into the questions today. And this first one, man, I'm really curious to hear your guys' take. This question asks, what do you wish you knew prior to competing for the very first time?
It's a good question.
You could go back in time. Damien's obviously 1 week post-show at this point. He's a first-time competitor. Jack, he's been around the block a time or two, or 3 or 4. I've personally actually lost count how many times you've been on stage. But Jack, if you could go back, to season A of 2018 before you stepped on that ACN rookie stage for the very first time, what do you wish you knew?
Yeah, so probably, I will reflect on that show and say that, or that prep, and I thought it was managed really well. I think my coach at the time did a fantastic job of preparing me for it. And because, back then we hadn't started TBD. We were, about a year away from starting T. It was in the end of 2017 of when I did my first ever prep and competed in season A of 2018. And it was a fairly textbook prep, to be honest. Like, we started at around 20 weeks out. I dropped from sort of the high 80s, so maybe 88, 89 down to 76. So like more weight than I would lose at the moment. But that doesn't mean it was, I wasn't in a disproportionate starting position for how much you should lose in 20 weeks. And I think what made it unique is the Masters of Dietetics and the placement. That was definitely a bit of a challenge, especially placement days and coming back to the gym after placement, getting in a session at that time of the evening was a challenge, because I'm definitely not an evening trainer, that's for sure. But I would say I'm almost going to turn this question on its head and say what benefited me was probably not knowing everything. So that way,
you stole my answer.
Well, you have some time to think of something else, because I think it's really great to go in there to an extent with a bit of an open mind and not really knowing what to expect in some capacities, because you then can't build anything up as to like, oh, this is going to be really, really difficult. Like, everyone's saying that it's the hardest thing they've ever done. They've been in the trenches, they're grinding day in, day out. They're on 75 grams of carbs, or they depleted water. Like, I obviously had a good knowledge at that point, but not practical knowledge. And even back then on social media, like, it was a very, very different place compared to what it is now in terms of people sharing their journeys and almost kind of how popularized natural bodybuilding is now compared to what it was about 8 years ago. So I would say the fact that I didn't know everything was refreshing. It meant, and I reflect on that first prep, and it was definitely easier than my second prep. Wasn't easier than my third prep, but that was purely just a timeline aspect of the third prep being very short. I have very good memories and reflective points of that first prep, which probably helped me go into what we're doing now in terms of forming TBD and feeling invigorated to do that.
Yeah, you definitely stole my answer on that front. I was like, gosh, the beauty of this entire journey when we reflect back over this past decade is the case of, at points, you are just a little bit naive. You are just blissfully ignorant. But I think that actually really benefits you as a coach, especially to be able to relate to your athletes and your clients later down the track, because you can obviously then share that wisdom and share that knowledge, because you're like, okay, so this is why, we want to make sure that you get yourself in contact with a really high quality posing coach, at least like a year out from your show, so you don't make a little bit of a goofball of yourself when you're up there presenting yourself on stage and everything of that nature. But there's just something to be said for the lived human experience, right? And just like, people can give you all the heads up in the world. You can listen to all the podcasts, watch all the YouTube videos, speak to all the coaches, talk to the other competitors about their own experiences. And of course, you get advice and you get tidbits and you get little heads up. But there's nothing that could ever compare it to actually just getting in the arena yourself, giving it a red hot crack, right? Yes, try to be prepared to the best of your ability, but just be at peace with the fact that you're going to make a few little silly mistakes. You know, you're going to take a few knocks on the chin and be like, oh man, if only I would have known that. But again, those things obviously they stick with you. And at the end of the day, like 99.9% of people on this planet who ever compete in bodybuilding, it's going to be in the amateur ranks, guys. All right. So we just have to remember to just take a step back sometimes and be like, this is meant to be fun. This is meant to be enjoyed. Take it just the right amount of serious. And again, like it's you're always on going to be on that, you know, that journey of self-improvement, right? So making those few little mistakes, you know, and doing things where you're just like, oh, I know I can improve, you know, I know I can be better than that. That's the beauty of doing more shows, you know, and actually doing more competitions later down the track, doing more seasons so that you can constantly refine and, you know, keep chasing that sense of like, okay, like I know that, you know, I can be the highest version of myself. But you only learn through experience. But that's the beauty of it. And that's honestly, that's really, really the fun of it. And I think that's what keeps people, you know, actually motivated to go into new improvement seasons, do more shows down the track, because they're constantly like, all right, that was good, but I want to be great, right? They really got something to prove to themselves.
Yeah, no, 100% agree.
What about you, Damien? You know, you're pretty fresh off the boat, but anything that you kind of wish you knew?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be quite boring and almost echo what you guys were saying, but like that lived experience is just so important. Like, sure, like as kind of Jack said, like, you know, I've, you know, like just having that experience of, you know, going through, you know, doing your degree with dietetics, having, you know, being really well versed from your coach, like obviously Jack, you gave me all the knowledge in the world around, you know, this is the process, this is how you may feel, this is the strategies we can do to employ. You know, if you are feeling like this way, you know, obviously always be reaching out if you do need some support, but it's, you don't really know until you know. And I guess where I would come up with the angle is, which in the current phase that I'm in now, in that kind of recovery phase, in it being quite challenging, and it, I guess, is quite timely, where we did a podcast on this only very, very recently. And, you know, even yesterday, I was listening back to the podcast and going the 1 week post show and thinking, wow, all of these points are hitting home so much harder than when we were even recording it, because I was still in prep during that time. And, you know, things around how I'm feeling around, you know, in social occasions. Like I was at a wedding over the weekend, you know, only not even a week post show, and, you know, this abundance of food was available, and, you know, how I'm feeling during that time, and, you know, how I felt the morning waking up after eating an abundance of food, and watching scale weight fluctuate, and I guess having that mental load, and it being actually quite challenging to deal with as well. And, you know, I guess that you don't really know how to deal with that until you're in the thick of it. And again, that lived experience is just so important. So yeah, it is, I guess, what I've learned during that phase, or I guess what I guess coming out of it now, like only a couple of days, you know, after that, I guess experience is, you know, that communication aspect is just so important.
Yeah. And guys, please don't take that from the angle of, all right, I'm just going to be an absolute doofus and wing this. Okay. So please make sure that, you know, you don't just see like a flyer for a bodybuilding show posted on the wall in your gym, or you see something online. You're like, oh, that looks cool. You know, I lifted a weight once or two in my life. And I don't know, if you're a dude, you own some Speedos, or you're a girl and you have a bikini, you're like, oh, sweet. You know, like I can go down the street, you know, get a spray tan. I kind of know how to do my own makeup. I like have a pair of heels in the back of my closet, you know, like let's just do it. Let's just do it for fun. Just rock up and just make an absolute fool of yourself. That's not to say if you're not going to do it, obviously get advice, get help, get assistance, try to set yourself up for success if you're going to do this, because yeah, as the years go on, even in the amateur ranks, people do take it very, very seriously. And it is a very competitive sport indeed. So you don't want to just rock up, you know, and make an absolute fool of yourself. But also, even if you do, try to do all of the things by the book, right? Like you do the improvement season, you get the coach, right? Like all the things. And then you show up to show day and you're still kicking yourself because you're like, God damn, you know, I'm a first timer and I wish I would have known this. It's like, calm down. All right. Like there's going to be another show. There's going to be another season. But yeah, it's going to be that really happy medium between like, don't be silly about it. And, try to take an educated approach, but also just be at peace with the fact of like the beauty of this is that you're going to make little mistakes along the way, but that's the best way to learn.
Yeah, definitely. And
Okay.
yeah, I think making some mistakes as well is, as you said, it really is controlled mistakes. Maybe like you don't want to make anything drastic enough that it derails the prep or creates a very significant obstacle. But I think small little mistakes, which come as a result of just experience, is a great way of learning for sure.
Even just ways to like just handle yourself on show day, right? When people are going into the unknown, sometimes they unnecessarily stress about like, oh God, like the venue wasn't open and everyone was waiting at the door and everyone has to get their hair and makeup done. Or like they were doing the tans across the city and like everyone had to drive to the tanning venue and then drive back to the venue. It's like, calm down, take a breath, right? And if you're saying the word everyone, that means that everyone's in the same boat, right? There's no need to stress. Also, like if hair and makeup's running behind time, guys, like they're not going to turn on the show if there's no competitors ready. Like it's going to be just fine. So even in that case, it's like how to actually handle yourself and your emotions and just like stay cool and calm on show day, or just little things. It's like, all right, like how early should I start pumping up prior to stage, right? Or like, oh man, I really should have got the tanners to double check, under my butt line because I got up there and I struck a back pose and I had these like weird little sweat marks under my butt cheeks. It's like the world spins on, right? Next show, someone will pat that down.
Even the post we did this week on diet foods, like, I mean, I feel like that's if people don't have the right education around diet foods leading into their prep, which many people may not, it's so easy to overuse those. And like whether it's sugar-free maple syrup or diet ice cream or the gums and powders like xanthan gum and the Ninja Creamy, like those. I remember dabbling in a few of those probably before I ever did the first prep, and then quickly realized that it's a no-go, especially the Queen's sugar-free maple syrup. It doesn't feel great, that's for sure.
Yeah, or all those konjac noodles.
Oh yeah, that's one thing I did put in the second prep in particular, and the first prep too. But my guts are pretty resilient, so I think I handled those surprisingly well. But it's more so like the really, really artificial stuff, because cognac technically, I guess, isn't artificial. It's from the root, or I think it's cognac root.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
just very, very high in fiber. Well, you eat too many of those things, and like your stomach really does feel like a rock.
Segues on to the next question nicely too.
It sure does, actually. And this question asks, how can you balance bodybuilding if you're experiencing IBS symptoms? And, how does fiber intake play a role in this?
Yeah, I think, again, very multifaceted, especially when it's around IBS symptoms, because IBS symptoms can be caused by a bunch of different things, both psychological and more mechanical, or just physiological in general. So even someone just lacking motility and their gut transit is too slow. And I mean, that could be something as simple as not drinking enough water, and also maybe not having enough soluble fiber, which helps kind of draw more water into the bowel and help kind of soften your stool and things of that nature, to something more complicated, like around a particular enzyme deficiency maybe, or a not an insufficient concentration of stomach acid, or potentially something different altogether around stress and anxiety, which we know that can influence the gut-brain axes and cause IBS symptoms as well. So we could literally do a whole podcast on each of those different facets of IBS. But I think first narrowing down on how many sort of check boxes do you have ticked in terms of sort of the easy to reach fruit in terms of managing IBS. So stress management, the quality of your nutrition as well. Like if, again, going back to diet foods, if you're having a bunch of diet foods or energy dense, nutrient poor food, or lots of highly processed refined foods, and you're experiencing IBS, then that's probably something to resolve first before kind of looking at something like the low FODMAP approach. Like low FODMAP approach is very popularized and for good reason. Like essentially the FODMAPs are fermentable oligodimonosaccharides and polyol. So essentially different types of carbohydrates which can stimulate IBS symptoms, like mainly due to just being very fermentable. So they're fermented in the large intestine and basically just produce a lot of gas and can cause bloating and can cause diarrhea or constipation, really any number of those IBS symptoms. So often a protocol, if you go to a dietitian, will be, hey, they're just going to whack you on the elimination diet, the low FODMAP diet, and then basically see if you get symptoms on the low FODMAP diet, which for many people, if it's kind of almost like going on an extreme example here, but almost like going on the carnivore diet. Like the reason why people don't have any issues in the acute term on the carnivore diet is because they're literally not fermenting anything. They're not eating any plant matter. And it's, I guess, somewhat similar on the low FODMAP, where if you're just eating white rice and chicken, you're not really giving your gut any sort of stimulus to ferment anything or produce any gas. But obviously long term, like that's not great because you're having a lower fiber intake and you're having poorer nutrition as a result of lower food diversity as well. So yeah, I won't steal the mic here, but yeah, either one of you can maybe follow on from that a little bit.
What do you think, Damien?
Yeah, I guess even with those like lower hanging fruits, like you were mentioning around like diet quality and types of foods, like a reason around IBS could potentially be other things like caffeine intake, even alcohol intake, can definitely lead to more of those IBS symptoms. Like that's, I guess, even as bodybuilders, like caffeine doesn't just have to come from coffee. Like it can be things like your pre-workout is something like that causing issues around IBS, and I guess it's around looking at not only the foods that you're eating, but potentially even supplementation. Like I know that I've had clients around, they may have those IBS symptoms and they're having a multitude of different supplements to try and negate whatever symptoms they're having. And it's like, okay, are the supplements that you are having of benefit, or are they just causing more issues to your gut and causing more stress to what's kind of going on? And that's where I guess that evidence-based practice really does help around looking at what supplements do work, what supplements don't, and again, really having that fine-tooth comb around that caffeine intake, because that can definitely be one reason of why people can get those sorts of symptoms, whether it be diarrhea or upset guts and things like that.
Yeah. And, you could take so many different angles at this question. And I almost want to just ask, like, how in general, if you're bodybuilding or not, would you just manage IBS symptoms? And of course, you would address, okay, what are you actually putting into your mouth on a daily basis and what are you actually consuming? But when it comes to bodybuilding, we know that there is that traditional kind of bro diet where you are eating from a very select group of food sources. And that can be incredibly restrictive, right? And it's very, very limiting. And more often than not, a lot of people will not be hitting adequate fiber intake, or at least fiber from a wide diversity of sources, right? So we're thinking about just a lot of rice products. You might be having like cream of rice in the morning with some whey protein powder, and as a fat source, you might have like a square or two of dark chocolate on there, right? And then your lunch, it might be something like some chicken breast or some white fish, and then you have a little bit of steamed broccoli along the side. And then as a dietary fat source with that, like you might just be having like 10 almonds. And then your dinner might be kind of similar. You might have, some white rice and another sort of green vegetable, like some Brussels sprouts or some asparagus. Yeah. Thank you very much. Or some potato, whatever it may be, but it is it's very exclusive to what you are actually consuming. And when you look at it from that standpoint, one, there's not a wide diversity of fiber types. And then also there might be not a sufficient amounts of fiber either. So, and then of course there too, there might actually be foods within that plan that like genuinely just don't agree with you. You might honestly just not digest things like broccoli and cruciferous vegetables very well, right? And IBS, like irritable bowel syndrome, it means that your bowels are irritated by something. And what's that going to result in? That's going to result in you probably having like a lot of gas, maybe some discomfort. You might find yourself experiencing constipation, or your body's like, whoa, get this out of me, right? And you experience a lot of diarrhea. It can be a lot of different things when it comes to IBS. There's a lot of symptoms there. But what I think that it is really important to address there is that first and foremost, when it comes to bodybuilding, you do not have to put yourself onto these very restrictive diets. And more often than not, that's just going to lead to a lot of like negative consequences down the track. As dietitians, so you have to look at that, and be like, you're not even hitting all of your essential fruit and vegetable intake, right? Or at least it's from a very, very limited amount. And then also you're more often than not actually hitting an adequate calcium intake either. If people are under the impression that things like, oh, red meat causes inflammation, and they're only eating their protein sources from things like whey protein and egg whites and white fish and chicken breast, you have a blood test, you're probably going to come back with some deficient iron stores and low ferritin levels, right? Low calcium intake, you're not going to have, super duper strong bones and high bone mineral density either. So there's a lot of issues when it comes to that front, especially like being very restricted with fruit and vegetable intake and not opting for a lot of different colors from fruits and vegetables. You're going to be majorly missing out on a whole bunch of different essential micronutrients as well. So I think there's definitely a case there for, one, identify what foods, yes, digest the best for you, but you still want to have a wide diversity of foods in your diet. And there's absolutely no reason why you can't have that within the context of a bodybuilding diet. You can still have a very whole foods diet filled with an abundance of plant foods. I bet you anything I could put someone on 1,500 calories and still get them eating 30 different plants every single week.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got some points that are a bit more specific to bodybuilding, which certain individuals, like let's say the extreme of an off season, and then the depth of a prep as well. But before I get there, I also want to talk about even just like easy wins. If you are having IBS, like one would be drink enough water, like drink even a little bit more than what you think you might need. So have like anywhere from the bare minimum 3 liters of fluid per day, and try just having water as well. If you're used to drinking, like having that with some diet cordial, or you're used to having a lot of that through coffee or decaf coffee, try just having just more plain water and see how that goes. Also chew your food. So I know this is like an old wives' tale, or like your mom or grandma told you this a lot, but try to like meticulously chew each bite like 10 to 20 times and then swallow. So masticate your food appropriately, and just allows you to break it up and get the salivary amylase in your mouth to get acting on those carbohydrates, and almost you kind of do a lot of the heavy lifting for your gut before it reaches your stomach essentially. And be mindful when you eat too. So don't just stuff your face. And I think especially for maybe personal trainers listening to this, like they're often maybe eating in between clients, or I'm sure many other jobs, they're eating in the car on the road or eating in between calls or whatever it may be. And I've been guilty of this in the past, where like you just stuff your face, get it down, and then move on to what you need to do next. But like sit down, be mindful, like kind of let your parasympathetic nervous system actually activate and allow you to be in a appropriate sort of frame of mind and a nervous system state to actually digest food. You don't want to be in flight or fight mode. And I guess moving on to, let's say someone's in the peak of their off season and they're on 4,500 calories a day or 3,000, regardless, like it's a lot of food for you, and it's kind of specific to your circumstance. But like, is it realistic to maybe have a huge, like, let's say if someone's on 600 grams of carbs, like they can't just get all of those things from like high fiber sources. Like you can, and I've done it before and I could just about manage it, but it doesn't mean it's possible for everyone, because there will be variances in terms of what your gut can or can't handle. And also like the adaptive process as well. So if you stick with it long enough, chances are it probably, depending on the individual, it probably will get a little better and it'll even out eventually. But it also doesn't mean it's optimal for bodybuilding. Like if you're trying to train after having 300 grams of oats like an hour ago, then I'm not sure how you're going to fare in that training session with like a rock solid amount of oats in your gut, plus fruits or and like cacao powder and nuts and seeds and nut butter. So like varying, like you want to have a foundation, of course, of different fiber types and different plant types, and having a great nutritious diet overall. But that's again where it comes to the sport specific nature of bodybuilding, to vary your food sources appropriately so that you are combining sport with nutrition essentially. So you're having appropriate food selections for that, because some people might be getting IBS symptoms purely because, and I would say this is probably the minority of people, but I think it's still worth mentioning. And I've gone through it, and Tierra, maybe you probably haven't gone through it as to much of an extent, but I think if your food was high, you probably would have gone through it a bit more. But just ensuring that, like, for example, for my evening meal, I have like the bodybuilder's favorite of white rice. Like, sure, I could replace that with lentils, or I could replace that with wholemeal pasta or brown rice. But if I have something fibrous on top of what I already have in that meal, which is a lot of vegetables, then it's not going to be a fun time for me. It's going to be quite uncomfortable to kind of go to bed with that full of a stomach and like be digesting all of that food overnight and reaching my carb target at the same time. So vice versa in prep as well, like your gut motility naturally slows. It's just an adaptive response by the body. So you need to be mindful of that. And like we all know in prep, where like using the bathroom or the urination increases in frequency, but using going for a number 2 definitely decreases in frequency with the slowing down of gut motility. So to an extent, like that's normal in prep to notice a change in digestion, but it means, if anything, you need to be even more careful with how the habits that you have around your digestion and using the bathroom and the type of foods you're eating to kind of support your gut health during prep, since it's in a more challenging circumstance.
Yeah, I think that you just need to really be paying attention and be well aware of, and also try your absolute best, to have somewhat of a routine. I fully understand that it might not be realistic for many people to, have an exact set number of meals every single day, whether that's between 3 to 5 meals, and they're eating them all within like a 15-minute time slot of the other compared to the day prior, right? Just being very just routine on that sense. So then they can actually pinpoint things like, oh, when I actually had my lunch around 1:30, after that, I experienced like a lot of gas in the afternoon. What exactly did I eat for lunch? Because that was happening yesterday and the day before, right? And everything else is all the same. So if all of those variables are controlled, obviously it's a lot easier to actually like narrow down and be like, okay, maybe I don't need to, be stir frying a whole bunch of onions with my chicken breast at lunchtime. Maybe I'm going to omit those and see if I feel a little bit better in the afternoon. Things like that. But again, it really does come down to, okay, if you are experiencing a lot of just discomfort in your guts, then you really do need to actually try to control the variables to the best of your ability. But a huge thing that plays a role as well is just stress, right? Like when people are just genuinely really stressed and just really strong in life, and there's a lot of like anxiety provoking things going on, or they feel very overwhelmed, right? Like that plays a huge role in how we actually digest our food. So it is really important that you are giving yourself time during the day to just catch your breath. And I really like how actually Jack made that point on how when you are eating, it's really important to actually be mindful of how you're eating, right? And making sure that you're putting yourself into an environment that is just like very calm and very relaxing. But it doesn't mean that you need to lock yourself in a room with just the doors like shut and you're all alone and there's just 4 walls around and you can't hear or see another thing except for your meal. But yeah, it really does mean that you don't want a whole bunch of stimuli going on. Maybe you don't want to be standing up in a really busy gym, right? Where like the music's pumping and people are constantly talking to you and you're just like, trying to shovel in food before you've got to get somewhere and you're constantly checking your watch. You only have 3 minutes left and all these sort of things. So you do need to actually put yourself into an environment where you are very calm and you're in that parasympathetic nervous system state so that you can properly digest your food. I think that's super duper important.
Yeah, for sure. I'd even touch on like a bit of a lived experience with myself around, I guess, what we were kind of talking about before, like going one way or the other around, potentially having too much fiber, but I guess then there's the other aspect of maybe not having enough. And I remember before I was started my dietetics degree and was still into that, I would say more of a hobby builder, as you could say, and really focusing on probably the sports side of the foods too much, having too many refined foods and just thinking that I'm going to the gym, I'm performing this, I was doing other training at the time as well, I need these sorts of foods to be able to fuel what I'm doing, but really missing out on those foods that are a little bit higher in fiber or have those little bits of micronutrients that do support that gut health and that digestion. And can definitely say when you do sit down and really have a think about the foods that you are eating, and like you kind of mentioned, Tiara, like even thinking about that process of elimination of, okay, what sorts of foods are agreeing with me, what aren't, and once you do go through that experience and really have a think about what you are eating, that's when you can start to make those changes and start to implement some of those other foods that can definitely help with that digestion.
But I'm just going to say that for the large majority of people who aren't reaching super duper high ends of food, like Jack Radford Smith might be eating north of 600 grams of carbohydrates during an improvement season, more often than not, a lot of people, especially like we can all probably all speak to this as coaches, right? What, maybe like 97% of our clients when we're saying like, hey, you know, body weight's actually decreasing and that's not our goal right now, or body weight's hitting a plateau and your body composition's looking really good, I think we should do a food bump. More often than not, people are pretty excited to eat a little bit more food. So it's usually not the case that people feel so ridiculously stuffed that they cannot get anything else into their body. And more often than not, when people like food, right, and they like to feel as though they're eating a decent amount of food and they like the portion sizes, I certainly think that it's usually the case of like, we shouldn't be demonizing whole foods and these high fiber foods, because those are going to do people a wealth of benefits compared to like having any potential negative consequences. I think more so it's the case of sometimes people just do need to be honest with themselves and be like, okay, listen, like I am drinking 4 cans of Monster every single day. Or like, I really like having super duper duper sweet oats. So I am lathering them in sugar-free maple syrup. Or even after dinner, right? Like people are still in the habit of having like diet Jello and, you know, having it with scoops of ice cream and all these sort of things, right? Like these little things that you can put in quotation marks, like sweet treats, right? So I think more often than not, it really is just addressing more of those artificial, highly processed foods that people are incorporating into their diet. And then just trying to, you know, you don't have to completely go cold turkey and restrict them, but more like just like find a little bit more balance and moderation in those things. Because more often than not, like it's really going to be more of those highly processed foods that are probably upsetting your guts rather than, you know, the good old whole foods. And then the other thing is too, is just your lifestyle, right? Like just like your quality of sleep at night, you know, like how are you actually taking care of yourself? And right, like again, like exercise obviously plays a huge role in it as well. And that really assists in a great way in terms of gut motility, is actually regularly going for some walks, you know, and actually doing some stretching and, you know, actually being a little bit more consistent with your training, etc. Like movement is really, really beneficial for gut motility.
Yep. Awesome. I think that's IBS quite reasonably well covered.
Well, this next one actually, this is an interesting question too. All right, this one says, is there a difference between purchasing vegan or whey protein powder?
Yeah, I think in the past, like you probably had to be more careful around your choice. I remember, and I don't think this is as common. Like I have my go-to brands at the moment, which I'll recommend to clients. So like I honestly haven't done too much research beyond like those overarching brands. But back in the day when sort of vegan protein powder kind of first became popular, like you had to look at the essential amino acid content and how much leucine it had, which is probably the major just consideration in my opinion between vegan and whey protein. I think there's certain aspects of texture and digestive components and maybe fiber intake of some of these. Plus, like typically vegan protein powders will have just a higher calorie content in general. They'll have some additional carbohydrates. They'll have some additional dietary fat as well, just due to the ingredients that are used, like pea protein or brown rice protein, whether they're also fortified with additional essential amino acids, which most of them usually are these days. So yeah, the biggest thing is just checking whether it has a complete profile of all the essential amino acids and sufficient leucine per serve as well. And yeah, that would be consideration number one for me personally. Yeah.
Yeah, I would even be looking at, I guess, the sources of the vegan protein. Like you can get now vegan proteins that have, you can get a multitude of different plant sources, whether it be, you know, proteins from rice and pea and soy, all within the one powder, or whether it's just a single source of protein, and whether that single source of protein then has additional amino acids then added in within that. That would be another consideration I would be making against if you are going down that plant-based route with protein powders, just making sure that if you are choosing that single source of protein, whether it be like a pea or brown rice, okay, have they added in those other essential amino acids to make it a complete protein, whereas more of those blends around, you know, multiple different plant proteins within one usually will have that profile because they do have those multiple different protein sources within it.
And in my experience, you know, some people can be under the impression that vegan protein powder might be the healthier option. But really, and obviously people who might not be able to tolerate dairy products, right? They are often under the impression that like, oh, I probably won't be able to digest whey very well, unless otherwise I might experience IBS symptoms. But we have to think that yes, whey protein powder and casein protein powder, they both are derived from dairy. They're both derived from milk, but they are the protein component of that milk. And when they goes through the processing and the filtration process, right, whether you're getting WPC or WPI, because it's virtually like near 100% protein, it has like very, very trace amounts of carbohydrates, maybe like 1 to 2 grams of carbohydrates, maybe like 1 to 2 grams of dietary fat. Generally, when people are experiencing maybe things like lactose intolerance, right? Lactose, it is the carbohydrate component in milk products, but it's the carb component, right? So if you feel as though, oh, if I drink, full cream milk, or I have some standard yogurt, like it just doesn't sit in my stomach very well, it doesn't, mean that you will not be able to comfortably digest and tolerate whey protein and casein protein, because those protein powders are so low in carbohydrate value. So I'd say, there is no denying that when you actually look at it on an amino acid profile, that whey protein, casein protein, it is going to have, a higher degree of your essential amino acids compared to these vegan protein blends as well. And dare do I say, I think it's even less processed. If you actually look on the back of a packet of a whey protein, and it's generally going to have very few ingredients. It's going to be like whey protein isolate with some flavoring and some sucralose. Woo! Right? Whereas a lot of these vegan proteins, if you actually look on the back of the packet, again, I'm not demonizing any ingredients, but they are quite heavily processed, and there can be a lot of ingredients in there. And we're not just talking about the sources of where they're extracting the actual protein powder from. So they might, yes, be like some brown rice and some pea and some soy, but then on top of that, they're adding things like xanthan gums and coconut oils, and different sugar extracts and this, that, and the other. So
gums, thickeners, emulsifiers to kind of hold it together and like improve the texture and mouthfeel and viscosity of it, which
exactly right. Yeah. Then that's and I know for myself, I love whey protein, and there's some vegan proteins out there that like, I'm like, ooh, this tastes nice. But I'm like, ooh, like the vegan protein actually does not digest the same as the whey protein. And no, it's not just the case of like, oh, it has like an extra gram or two of fiber. It's like, no, it's not the fiber, it's all the other stuff. But again, different people can tolerate different things. But I'd say at least like if you are not a vegan and you can like comfortably digest whey and casein protein powders, more often than not, that's probably from a digestive standpoint and a nutritional standpoint, dare do I say, even a financial standpoint, that's probably the avenue that you want to consider taking.
I even think as well, like touching on the point you made around the lactose and that concern around whey proteins, having that lactose, like if you are really concerned about it, you can opt for more of a whey protein isolate, which has even less carbohydrates than those whey protein concentrate or casein protein powders. So if you are really concerned, then you can opt for more of a whey protein isolate. It is going to be a little bit more expensive, but I guess if you're wanting more of that, peace of mind, that can definitely be an option for you.
But if you are going down the vegan protein route, yeah, definitely try your absolute best to make sure that it is, generally like brown rice and then a pea blend. That's going to give you an essential amino acid profile. And, if you are reading the back of the ingredients panel, like it is ideal that it is fortified with perhaps some other essential amino acids. Like you want to make sure that the leucine content per serving, and a serving should have, somewhere in the territory of 25 to 35 grams of protein in entirety, but you want to make sure that that leucine content is going to be somewhere around 2 to 2.5 grams of actual leucine within the serving of protein powder that you're consuming, just so that you can adequately stimulate muscle protein synthesis.
Yeah, I think that's well covered.
Excellent. All right, well, this final question, it asks, is there a way to flexibly live during prep? Like, can you go out to social events?
Yeah, I think this comes down to, the short answer is yes, like you can. And I think often, depending on what media you're exposed to in bodybuilding, it can be a broad spectrum of things. Like maybe you're in the hardcore camp, or your coach is super hardcore where, okay, you need to become a bodybuilding hermit in comp prep in order to stick to everything and to basically perform at your best and to get the best result possible. But then you might have someone else, like an individual who comes to mind is, and I definitely don't want to speak for him, but like Alberto Nunez from 3DMJ, where you see his prep and he doesn't actually start tracking until a certain point, and he has a lot of different foods. Like he seems to be eating something different each day, which, and I can see the merit in both of those things. Personally, I'm more of a fan of Alberto Nunez's approach, where he kind of embodies that. It's ultimately the foundational principles of energy balance, fueling yourself, creating a calorie deficit essentially, and managing the variables that elicit the result in a bodybuilder. Like, you don't need to do that rigidly. I think when you're a first timer and you have less experience and, I guess, internal confidence about the process, then I think falling back on more rigidity makes a lot of sense, and it can even be helpful as long as it's done in a healthy manner. Like, you don't want to have so much rigidity during the prep that, like, when you get on the other side, everything crumbles around you and you're stuck in quicksand and you drown. But I think having probably more rigidity for a first timer or first 1 to 2 seasons, and of course, if someone just likes rigidity, like if they want to wake up and do the same thing every day and eat the same meals, and they can still emerge on the other side and be in a healthy position, then that's fantastic. Like, that's all the more to them. And to be honest, that's probably what I do in a prep. I'm in a prep to prep, and the athlete mindset locks in, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do this, be the best athlete possible. And then when I emerge on the other side, I'm going to manage things as best as I can. But there's an extent to that. Like, am I not going to go out to a social event in prep? Like, of course, I'm still going to go out and socialize at an event. Like, it may mean that I bring my meal. Like, again, I like that peace of mind and security of being able to bring a meal out and not exclude the social event entirely. And there's a nice gray area of what you may want to do during prep. So you may bring a meal out, whereas if you're someone who has a lot of experience and intuition around their nutrition, like, and they're 16 weeks out, they may choose to eat at that social event and just ensure that, like, they're not consuming too much food or too little food, and they're within an appropriate bandwidth.
Yeah, I think for the case of your social health, it is still really important to still attend events. And by all means, you definitely don't want to become a recluse, and you don't want to just, be super antisocial and stay at home and, do the bodybuilding things, quote unquote. But also, I think it's also just so important to recognize, like, guys, like no one's really actually going to notice, no one's actually going to care, and no one's really going to, necessarily put a lot of thought into what you're doing, right? Like, everyone's kind of just hyper-focused on themselves. But even in the case of a social event, like, let's say that you were at a work function, right? And like, everyone's mingling and like, they're handing out drinks, and like, there's waiters walking around with little spring rolls and stuff like that. Like, put yourself in someone else's shoes, right? Like, let's say that you're all standing in a circle, right? And people are holding some sort of drink in their hand, and a waiter comes around and they're like, hey, would anyone like a spring roll, or would anyone like a cucumber sandwich, right? Like, whether people are in bodybuilding preps or not, it's a very normal human thing to either accept or deny something and then carry on with life. So even though in your head and in your little bubble, you might be thinking like, oh, maybe people know that like I'm actually just holding a glass of water right now, or this is just like soda water with a little bit of lime, and it's not actually, a vodka tonic or something. Oh man, can you tell I don't drink a vodka tonic? Is that even a thing? Oh yes, that would be a thing. I was like, oh man.
I know gin and tonic's a thing, but I'm not the right person to ask either.
Me neither.
Vodka and soda is probably the more
Yeah.
My brain was like, is tonic water alcoholic? Vodka tonic. I was like, well, is that like a double alcoholic drink? Anyway, clearly I'm the one there with the soda water and the lime. But what I'm trying to get at, guys, is that like, if you are surrounded by people and you're making a decision or they're making a decision, it's like, oh no, I'm fine. I wouldn't like a spring roll. It's like life carries on. No one's going to be like, oh, but you got to have one, right? And like, no one actually cares.
To play devil's advocate, there are some petty people who do take it on themselves to be like, they do get a bit attacked when someone is disciplined and they stick to their goals. Like, and I'm not saying that's the majority of circumstances.
Do they really get attacked? Do they really get in a fight? Like, people are, I think that people build things up to be way more, dare do I say, catastrophic in their head.
It's not catastrophic. I mean, I'm interested not to throw Damien in the middle of this, but like, I think some people can be pretty petty around other people's habits and choices, and especially if they feel victimized that, oh, this person's locked in on their goals, like they're losing weight, and while I'm over here enjoying the spring rolls, and they maybe feel a bit insecure about that.
Yeah, but it might be like just one comment that you just have to like brush off your back. It's not like you're getting ganged up by people who are trying to like force feed you spring rolls and they're giving you a really hard time.
I agree with that.
Depends. Yeah, like even if I reflect back during prep, like going out to social events and birthdays and things like that. I remember one specific time where we went out. We went out for dinner, and I think I was around 10 weeks out or something like that, and I chose to still go out with the family. Like we were all there with my family, everyone, friends and family, and everyone was eating their dinner at the restaurant, and I was sitting there. I didn't have anything. I had a Pepsi Max, and I just enjoyed socializing with everyone. And while everyone ate their meal, and sure, it was challenging. Like it was a really difficult time to, I guess, sit there and watch everyone eat. But I still made that decision to go out and socialize and talk to everyone. And there was family members who didn't really know what bodybuilding was or what a prep was, and they were asking me questions around it. And why can't you eat this or why can't you eat that? And it was just, I guess, explaining them through that process. And then all of a sudden, the cake came out, and it was even that why can't you have a slice? It's only one slice. It's not going to make a difference, and it's friends and family, regardless of, they do love you and they care for you, but they don't really understand. And that can be quite challenging to have that conversation with people because they don't fully grasp it. And maybe it is they can't go through something like that themselves because they don't have that self-discipline, and that then they potentially do kind of get, concerned around it all. But yeah, it can be a challenging time, but again, it's around that communication aspect of this is why I'm doing this, and making sure that everyone kind of understands. And it is a personal decision, and social events can be a bit of a challenging one to navigate during prep for sure.
Did you
But
find
even in that scenario, right? Like you said, it was a conversation, or maybe it was two conversations. But if you and your family were sitting at dinner for an hour and a half, I'm sure, Damien, that it was not the topic of conversation for an hour and a half. Not everyone was like, oh, Damien, why aren't you ordering an entree? Why don't you have a meal? Damien, do you want a bite? Damien, why don't you have a slice of cake? Like sometimes I think that people build it up in their heads of like, oh my God, the spotlight's on me. But it's not, it might just be like one or two comments, one or two questions. But if you're a self-confident person and you're just like, yeah, like I'm doing this bodybuilding thing and like, you're really upbeat and happy and proud about it, people are more so they're likely to be supportive, right? And they're actually likely to be curious and intrigued and be like, oh, I had an aunt one time who she's not around anymore, but she did a bodybuilding show once. That was kind of interesting. So again, I think it's honestly how you hold yourself and how you like the perspective that you see the situation from. But I really, really hope for God's sake that there were other things spoken about at that dinner than just like why Damien's only having some water or, a Diet Coke.
For sure. But I guess even with that, like not everyone is that confident person. Not everyone can take those sorts of comments, just brush it off, and it is what it is. Some people do hold on to those comments, and they do start to question themselves, and they do start to question maybe I can have something, and maybe that they might then have an entree, and then that entree might lead to having finishing off someone's main, and all of a sudden they've had cake as well. And I guess it can potentially go down that path too. But
well, that's a good point. If you are going to attend a social event where there's eating, some people are like, oh, I'll eat afterwards, or maybe I should have a meal before, and maybe I'll have a meal at the social event. It's probably better for if people know that they might be on that slippery slope of like, ooh, I'm pretty hungry, and I've this is new territory for me. I really want to be able to manage my appetite, make my actions match my words, right? It's probably going to be better for you to actually eat prior to that event so that you're not actually going into the event hungry, or bring your own meal and own it.
Yeah, I mean, what I think, we could definitely have a whole debate around. I think the confidence piece is a big one, because especially if they're a first timer and they might not even know like what is kind of correct or incorrect, or what is okay, not okay. Like if someone else that is fit and goes to the gym regularly says, oh yeah, have this slice of cake, like you'll be fine, you'll be able to burn it off tomorrow. And you're in the headspace of someone who like is a first time competitor, they have no nutritional education. Like, hey, like why can't I do that? Like this guy's fit, they say it's totally possible. So yeah, it's but then it falls back on discussing that with your coach, like reaching out to your coach around going to the social events and having that education prior. But I did want to touch on what I said initially around like nutritional competence, like your knowledge and skill of handling these situations, and also your knowledge and skill of nutrition in general and the process. Like as your competence increases over time, you'll be able to do more of these flexible things and feel good about it and not let it derail your prep. But the only way to get better is by doing it. And so therefore I would encourage people to have that, like have that level of flexibility, like not enough to derail or set them back, but enough to build that skill, build that competence, and build that confidence as well that they can do it. Like I'm sure, Damien, in your next prep, like when you have the social occasions again, you'll find that easier and easier because you've gone through it once before.
Yeah, it would definitely just come down to that discipline aspect as well. And also if you get to that point where it's like, man, this is actually really going to work in your favor, and just the stress component, like it's going to alleviate so much. And again, when it comes down to nutritional competency and you think about like, okay, generally every single night for dinner, I've got a lean protein source and I've got like, a few hundred grams of non-starchy vegetables. If my family wants to go out to a buffet, right? Sure, it would be awesome to dig into, all of the pasta on hand. But do you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to, go over to the buffet. I am going to get one of the leanest steaks or one of the leanest chicken breasts. I'm going to hit up that freaking salad bar, and you can still make a meal that's a very similar composition to what you would be eating while you're at home, right? But you're still enjoying the social event in itself. And sometimes people might surprise themselves, right? They actually, the combination of being de-stressed, being really happy, eating a few different foods, getting a really good night's sleep that night, because they're like, man, like I was able to get the best of every single world. They wake up the next morning on Saturday and like, woo, new low, right? But you have to obviously prove to yourself that you are capable of doing that. But yeah, it does come down to understanding, like, just having much higher ends of nutritional literacy. And coming back to our very first question of the day, like, what's something you wish that you knew? A lot of people, as they go further and further down this bodybuilding journey, they probably look back in hindsight and they're like, man, I wish I just knew that I could be a little bit more chilled out when it comes to social events. I wish I knew that I could actually partake time to time, even if I'm in prep, right? I wish I knew that, I could have something that was off my plan. But, hindsight's always 2020. But that's the beautiful thing, is that I think, like you said, Jack, like if you're a first-time competitor, second-time competitor, it's probably better that, you are a little bit more stringent with following certain, dare do I say, rules, right? But then as time goes on, you start to loosen the reins on a little few things, and you're just like, man, I really can actually incorporate a little bit more balance into this. And it all works out for the best.
I think, yeah, the final thing I'd say, like discipline also comes with confidence and experience as well. Like the more confident you are, the more knowledge you have, the more experience you have, the more easier it is to be disciplined. Kind of almost like training to failure in the gym. The more you do it, the higher your skill is, the easier it becomes. Like, yeah. But I think we'll end on something that we learned this week. I'm happy to go first because I'll give you guys some time to think about it. And this morning, like it's actually raining in Brisbane at the moment, and there's a bird called a storm bird, and I used friendly ChatGPT to help figure this out, because back in another area of Brisbane where I used to live, like there would be this annoying bird that would always wake you up in the morning. I'm not going to try and mimic it because, like, yeah, I would definitely embarrass myself. But it's a very unique sound, and it's actually incredibly annoying as well. So like it always wakes you up in the morning to the extent where you need to use earplugs, and it seems to have come to Nudgee Beach now, which is unfortunate. So, but yeah, I looked it up, and it's called a storm bird, and it coincidentally, I'm not sure if it started today because it's literally raining and there's storms approaching, but I just thought that was coincidental.
I'm curious to know, Jack, what did you look up? Like, what did you type into ChatGPT? Were you like, there's this annoying bird? Or did you actually have to record the bird's sound and then you somehow put that into ChatGPT and it's like, I know the species?
I was hoping Jack would actually make the sound into ChatGPT.
Yeah. No, I don't know if ChatGPT would even recognize.
But how did you identify what type of bird it was? Like, what did you
I just
search?
described it. So storm approaching early in the morning. Like I just tried to describe the type of call. So it's like makes a one long note, as opposed to like a kookaburra, which is more of a laugh or a cacophony of syllables. So yeah, and then it gave me a list of a few different ones, like obviously like in this area of Brisbane, Australia, etc. Yeah.
And then did you look them up and then
Yeah,
you were like,
I
oh,
grouped the noises, so, and then I narrowed down on the storm bird.
interesting. And of course, you can see what it looks like, correct?
Oh no, you can't see it. No, like I wish I could see it, because then I'd try and stop it making that noise.
Oh, it's camouflage. Oh man. All right. Something that I learned this week. Okay. This is a little bit of a fun fact, and it really made me think. I learned that the average human has 70,000 thoughts every single day. And that just gave me all the thoughts, because I'm like, how do they even get that number? 70,000 thoughts in a given day. And what even defines a thought? Like 70,000, is that just like you constantly looking around, and you just notice different little things? You're like, oh, that's the color green, or, that tripod has a screw on it, or, ooh, there's a capsicum seed on the ground. Clearly I'm describing my house right now, but but like what, 70,000 thoughts, like that is crazy. But also, again, like how did they know? Where did they get that number from? How do you even quantify that?
I mean, I could ask you how electricity works, and you wouldn't be able to quantify that either. So like,
well, I guess that would tie in with all of our thoughts, because we've got our electrical synapses.
yep. Yeah, I can't help you
But,
there,
yeah.
unfortunately. Yeah, it's not
I don't
in
know.
my repertoire of nutrition and exercise.
But that's
it's outside of my
that's a
wheelhouse,
fun
for
fact.
sure.
70,000 thoughts. But that's also a reason why, when people ask you, they're like, if you had a superpower, what would it be? And some people are like, oh, I wish I could read minds. It's like, dude, why would you want to read minds? It would be a mess.
You'd have to be very specific about in what way you wanted to read minds. Otherwise, yeah, you'll get a bunch of info. That's for sure.
It would just be awful. That would be the last superpower I'd ever want. I was like, dude, I'm trying to cope with what's going on through my own head. Clearly there's 70,000 plus things going on every single day. I don't need to know that, like, square root that with just general people I'm walking around on the street. That's crazy. Damien, what did you learn this week?
Yeah, I guess for me, our power went out last night, and I got home, and power going out is totally fine. It is kind of what it is, but it made me think like around the process of me, I guess, shaping like how I go to bed. Like, I ended up in bed a lot earlier than what I would with the power when the power's usually on, and because I'm either I'm doing some work or finishing things up, or maybe the TV's on and things like that. And it's, I guess, really made me reflect around how much I rely on electricity of an evening, and how much I guess it takes up of my time, and even our family's time as well. So yeah, it's probably around like probably asking yourselves a little the questions when you are at home of an evening of, if the power was off, would I still be doing this, or is this kind of necessary at this time? Can it wait until tomorrow when the power's back on? Or I guess even more simpler terms, like what's the most important thing at the moment to be able to get you to bed? Like, really, can these things kind of wait for the next morning? And yeah, it just kind of made me reflect on how much I do use electricity of an evening, or rely on things like the internet, or things like that, because not only was the Wi-Fi out, then the cellular data around was out, so I wasn't able to go even to scroll on Instagram or anything like that. So yeah, it was kind of a bit of a reflection of how much I do utilize the electricity of an evening.
Did you get a good night's sleep?
Yes and no. I'm still, I guess, 1 week post show, so sleep is okay, but it's getting better. But I wouldn't say it impacted drastically more. I was actually up earlier than what I usually was, but the sleep was still not too bad.
Well, hey, the research actually says one of the best ways to actually get more sleep is to get yourself into bed a little bit earlier. So, hey, storm season coming, power's going to be out a little bit more often. Maybe people are going to be getting a bit more snooze.
Yeah.
Goddamn storm birds. But it's a mystery. I guess apparently they're camouflage, aren't they? They just make noise.
No, they're black with like a red crest or something, but they're so loud. I mean, they could be on the other side of the suburb for all I know. And yeah. You guys,
they're like the roosters, of the storms,
yes.
Right? Like, obviously roosters are like, you, the sun's up. This dude's like, you. There's gonna be thunder and lightning.
That's pretty close to its call, actually. What you just said.
There we go.
Yeah.
But guys, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Hope you enjoyed it. And as always, we would very much appreciate whatever platform you're listening on, whether that is a podcast channel, whether that's YouTube, leave us a 5-star rating, leave a comment or review if you so desire. And if you would like to get in touch with us, you can also Google the Bodybuilding Dietitians. You can search us up on YouTube. You can search us up on Instagram. You can always find, our personal handles down in the show notes below for Tara Nelson, Damian Cox, Jack Bradford Smith, you name it. But next Monday, we will be back as always with another episode.